Don't you just love the ridiculous? I love the ridiculous. How about these for some ridiculous laws? These are laws in some of the states of America. If you keep your donkey in a bathtub in Georgia, you might be arrested. I like this one. In Michigan, in one of the places in Michigan, it is illegal to paint a sparrow and sell it as a parakeet. I have to say I like this next one, and I don't know whether I'm even going to say go give it a try. It is illegal to whistle underwater in Vermont. Isn't that good? Illegal to whistle underwater. And one more. There was a whole list, but there's one more. It is illegal, now men, listen up here. It is illegal for a man to knit during the fishing season in New Jersey. So take care, because you might break a law that you didn't even know existed. And the reading that I wrote down wrong for John is from Luke chapter 6, verses 1 to 6. And it's about the Sabbath, but it's also about a point of law. One Sabbath, Jesus was going through the cornfields, and his disciples began to pick some ears of corn, rub them in their hands, and eat the grain. Some of the Pharisees asked, "Why are you doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath?" Jesus answered them, "Have you never read what David did when he and his companions were hungry? He entered the house of God, and taking the consecrated bread, he ate what is lawful only for priests to eat. And he also gave some to his companions. And then Jesus said to them, 'The Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath.'" And then it goes on to talk about another Sabbath incident. The Pharisees were disputing a point of law about the Sabbath with Jesus. They'd seen his disciples pick an ear of corn. I bet you've done that, walked through a cornfield, picked one of the husks and given it a rub, and you've got the little bits of corn, and then you have a feel of it to see if it's ripe. Ever done that? At the time of Jesus, that was interpreted as work, because they were so concerned with keeping the Sabbath and not working. They had to define further and further and further detail about what work might constitute. How many ears of corn did you have to pick before it was defined as harvesting? And because that question couldn't really be answered, it was better not to do any. Better not to pick any corn at all. But let's go back. I'm less interested in the corn and the story of David today. I'm more interested in the Sabbath and what Jesus intended as the Sabbath. We have to go back, of course, all the way to Genesis chapter 2. By the seventh day, God had finished the work he had been doing, so on the seventh day, he rested. He rested from all his work. And God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because he rested from all the work of creating he had done. Seventh day, creation finished, God rested. And then he blessed it and made it holy, which basically means he consecrated it, he set it apart, he made it different. And I found that a real challenge. He made it different to the other days of the week. And there's a question for us today. Whatever your Sabbath day is, and I'm not particularly thinking about Sunday, because as a nurse I've worked many weekends, and as a chaplain I've worked many weekends. Sunday is not necessarily my Sabbath. But whatever day I take as a Sabbath, is it different to what I do on other days? Is it different to a day off? There's a question I'll leave you pondering. The next episode, if you like, of Sabbath we find in Exodus. And it's the provision of manna in the desert. And basically, God had provided manna for them. And he said, go out and collect every day, but don't collect too much because you know what will happen to it. You know what happened to it. It went rotten, didn't keep. And so they could only collect what they needed for the day until day 6 of their week. And then they collected double, didn't they? And on that day, they were collecting for the day 7, for the Sabbath. Now, why was this so important? Well, the Israelites at this point had been set free from their slavery in Egypt. And as slaves, they did not have a day off. No days off. They worked day after day after day after day after day after day after day. No days off, no Sabbaths. So when God said, collect enough manna so that you can have it on the 7th day, it was reminding them that they were a free people. And that's a really important reminder, that they were a free people. And then we get to a very important bit in the kind of development of Sabbath. And do you know, one to my shame that I had kind of lost sight of? What happens in Exodus 20? The commandments. And one of those commandments is keep the Sabbath. It's a commandment. It's not a choice. And that made me go, oh, whew, it's a commandment to keep the Sabbath day different. Different. Keep it different. So how do we end up with the situation? I've explained it in part already, but the situation as described by Luke in the cornfield, when the Pharisees are saying, you can't do that on the Sabbath. Well, they had put together these minutiae of things that could not be done so that they did not break the big laws of the day. So they had hundreds of little tiny things. And an example is, a bit like the silly rules of America that I read out at the beginning. One of their rules was, it's illegal to spit on the Sabbath. You can spit any other day of the week you like. You cannot spit on the Sabbath. Why? Because spitting isn't work. Okay? It's not work to spit. But ploughing is work. And ploughing was defined as moving dirt to make a trench or a furrow. And if you spit in the dirt, there is the chance that you could make a little furrow in the dirt, and that is ploughing. So therefore, it was illegal to spit on the Sabbath so that you could not do that. And we laugh. But you know, because we laugh at the ridiculousness of it, don't we? But you know, how ridiculous are we? Because I was pondering Sabbath, and I was thinking about Sabbath being a day that's different to being a day off. And it made me think about our time. And, even when we compare our time to, say, our grandparents' time or our great-grandparents' time, think about the gadgets and gizmos that we have in life today that saves us time. Dishwashers, washing machines, tumble dryers, things like that. Labour-saving hoovers, time-saving. So if we are labour-saving and time-saving, why are we busier than ever? What's happened to all the time that we've saved because we can shove our clothes in a washing machine, go out to Sainsbury's and shop, or we could order it on the internet and have it delivered and not even have to do that? What are we doing with our time? When I think back to my grandmother, in the early days, she would be getting up early on wash day to light a fire in the copper so that she could boil the clothes and stand over them all day long. And then she would push them through the mangle. I like the mangle bit. I like doing that bit. Hard work, but I like doing it. And then she would hang it out and hope it didn't rain. And then she would have to iron it, not with our nice light steam irons. It was more than a day's work to do the washing. We can shove it in a washing machine and go off and do something else. So why are we so busy? I don't know, you'll have to answer that for yourselves. But I think one of the things that we maybe do need to ask ourselves is, have we lost the art of Sabbath? Have we lost that art? Is our Sabbath day full of doing all the things that we do on days off? And actually there's no differentiation between Sabbath and a day off anymore, I wonder. So I had a look to see what the Jewish view of Sabbath is. And if you think that Jews spend the Sabbath in the synagogue all day long on their knees in prayer, that's not what they do. I love the definition that they have of Sabbath. They do pray. They pray every day, but they do pray on the Sabbath. And they look forward to Sabbath. They really look forward to it through the week because it's described as a day of feasting. They eat on other days of the week as well, but it's a day of feasting. But on Shabbat, they eat more elaborately and more, get this, leisurely. More leisurely. When did you last eat a leisurely meal? It's an interesting question, isn't it? When did you last eat a leisurely meal? That in itself could be a Sabbath, And what they do on Sabbath, remembering it's a command, remembering that part of it is remembering that they are free and no longer slaves, they do what restores and delights and upholds them. They spend time with family. They walk. They enjoy creation. They play. When did you last play? Yes, they worship. But they walk and smell the roses. They kick the leaves. They notice the treasures because it is a leisurely time. And yes, God is in it. And God is worshipped. I hate to say it, but it sounds a bit different to church 3 times on a Sunday, doesn't it? Sabbath. And I think the other thing is, how do we find Sabbath moments in our days? Just little nuggets of time where we can do what God did. Stop. Stop. Just for a moment or two. So the disciples in Luke fell foul of a man-made law. They didn't fall foul of the God-made law. The God-made law was to keep the Sabbath different, to keep it holy. Not quibbling about ears of corn or not. And then Jesus says the thing that probably upset them the most. I am the Lord of the Sabbath, he said. Meaning, I'm God. I am God. And Jesus is basically saying, the Sabbath is not that hard to keep, but you are making it such hard work to keep that it's no longer Sabbath. So think about your Sabbath days and how hard you might work. That's not to say that doing big family lunches or whatever, doing all the church stuff and all of that is wrong. It's not wrong. Doing a big family lunch might be exactly the thing that delights and fills you with joy. Keeping the Sabbath is not supposed to be hard. It's a challenge, I think, to keep it different to the rest of the week. Keep it different. And keep your eyes on the Lord while you do it. Shabbat Shalom.